With BODMAS being the underlying rule that overrides every single bit of numeracy that we do in mathematics, it's important that we can use this and utilise it effectively, not only with whole number calculations involving positive and negative numbers, but also with fractions. What we're going to look at here is we're going to look at how we divide a pair of fractions or mix numbers together. Now there's a standard technique that works every single time for this, and there's a standard way of representing it such that it's easy and quick to be able to do. This method's called stick, switch, flip. Basically what we do is with a calculation, we stick the first fraction down, we switch it from a divide to a times, and then we flip fraction number 2. So the denominator becomes the numerator becomes the denominator. What we've done at that stage is we've turned a division calculation into a multiplication calculation. And by this point we should know how to multiply a pair of fractions together, numerators together, denominators together, simplify if we can. So let me show you exactly what I mean. So let's imagine I've got 2/3 divided by 4/7. I'm going to use this method of stick, switch, flip. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the first fraction down, I'm going to switch the divide into a times, and I'm going to flip the 4/7 and make it 7/4. What I'm then going to do is do my technique that I normally would for multiplying a pair of fractions. I'm going to multiply the numerators together, I'm going to multiply the denominators together. What that will give me is 14/12, and then I'm simplifying it if I can. Well, in this case I can divide top and bottom by 2, and I'll end up with 7/6, which if we wanted to write it as a mixed number is 1 1/6. So this technique allows me to take that division calculation, make it into a multiplication calculation, and then do it quickly, simply, and easily. Now one thing we have to remember with it, and we always have to remember this with any fraction calculation, is we always simplify a final solution. We always simplify it if we can. The previous answer gave us 14/12. Well, we know to simplify that, we're going to divide the top and the bottom by 2. We're going to get 7/6, which I then turned into 1 1/6. Now, if a question asked me for a mixed number answer, I'd have to give that final one there. If it didn't, and I wanted to leave it as an improper fraction, I could just do that there. The bottom line is either way, it must be simplest form. So bear that one there in mind. Always simplify it if you can. Doing division with a pair of fractions is fairly straightforward if we follow this technique. However, a question can be raised. What about if we have mixed numbers? Now, if we're multiplying a pair of mixed numbers together, the technique was to do the first step being taking those two mixed numbers and making them improper fractions. But the division one we're going to turn into a multiplication. What that means is we follow that same first step. So if we've got mixed numbers in our calculation, our first step is to turn them into improper fractions. So this one here, 3 1/4 divided by 2 3/5. What I'd do is I'd rewrite that and I'd make it 13/4 divided by 13/5. Now that I've got them written as improper fractions, I can use my technique of stick, switch, flip and complete the calculation the way it should be. So stick the first one down, 13/4, switch the divide to a times, flip the second fraction, and it becomes 5/13. Then I've got to do my multiplication of fractions. Now I could do it tops together, bottoms together if I wanted, or if we also think about simplifying, we can simplify diagonally if we wanted. Those two are 13s, so they can cancel to become 1. So it then just becomes 1/4 times 5/1, which gives me a solution of 5/4, or 1 1/4 if I wanted it as a mixed number itself. The technique doesn't change. Between multiplication and division, that first step is always take a mixed number and make it improper. Then if it's a division, it's just that first extra step of stick, switch, flip. Take it and turn it into a multiplication. Steps for multiplication stay the same. Tops, bottoms, put them together, simplify the answer, job done. So what I've got here for you is 4 examples. I want you to pause this video, have a go at them, and then come back and check what you've done against what I'm going to show you here for the solutions and the working. So that should have been enough time for you to have a crack at these. Let's have a look at the answers for this one. Now, what I want you to remember is the technique that we are looking at using for division of fractions. SSF, stick, switch, flip. So this first one here, stick the first one down, switch the divider to times, and flip the second fraction. Then we multiply tops and multiply the bottoms just as we've done before. So tops, 3 times 8, that gives me 24. Bottoms, 5 times 7, that gives me 35. So my final solution here is 24 over 35. If I could, I'd simplify it. I can in this case. Second one here, slightly bigger numbers, yes, but the technique doesn't change. Just because the numbers are bigger doesn't mean we change what we fundamentally do. All that will happen is the calculations themselves will change. So stick, switch, flip. Stick the first fraction down, 4 over 7. Switch it to a times. And then flip the second fraction to 21 over 16. Then I want to multiply them just like I would in a multiplication. Well, looking at the numbers that's there, I can actually straight away spot, well, if I go diagonally, I can cancel out 4 there, but I can also cancel out 7 going across that way. So what that means is I've essentially got 1 over 1 times 3 over 4. So actually, my solution quite nicely works out to be 3 over 4. If I hadn't noticed that straight away, I'd have done 4 times 21, 7 times 16, and then I'd have hoped to myself I'd have been able to see how to simplify it down. Spotting it at that step there, though, saves me all that hassle. Third one down here, 6 over 7 divided by 3 1/5. Now you notice one element of that is a mixed number. Fine. All we have to do is that first step we discussed earlier on, which was if we have a mixed number, turn it into an improper fraction. So the 6 over 7 remains the same. I'm going to keep it as a divide because remember I'm not using stick, switch, flip yet. I'm just rewriting my fractions at this point. 3 1/5 becomes 16 over 5. Now that I've got it written like that, then I can use stick, switch, flip. So stick the first one down, 6 over 7, switch it to a times, and then do 5 over 16. Then I can do my calculation. Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to notice that I can simplify across that way, and it just makes my life a little bit easier when I do it, because my top becomes 3 times 5, which is 15, and my bottom becomes 7/8, which is 56. Now again, if I could spot another step of simplifying at this point, I could do it, but there's nothing there that allows me to do that, so I just leave it as it is. And in this last example here, both elements are mixed numbers. So what I have to do is change both elements into improper fractions first. So the 2 1/2, that becomes 5 over 2. Remember, at the change stage, we keep it as a division. Only changes to multiplies when I'm at stick, switch, flip. The 5 2/3, that'll become 17 over 3. Now that I've got that, now I do stick, switch, flip. So that'll give me 5 over 2, switch it to a times, and flip the second fraction. Then I do tops together, bottoms together. What I'd end up with is 15 over 34, and that's my final solution. So there's 4 examples of how to do it, gradually building up in terms of first line there becoming higher in terms of difficulty with the numbers, and then second line slowly working in mixed numbers to go with our fractions. Now remember, this is a fairly straightforward set of steps as long as we follow the technique. If we can follow the technique and master it, There is no reason we shouldn't be able to master this skill when it comes to working with division of fractions. So what are the rules then when it comes to this? Well, there's a couple of key ones. Firstly is about generally remembering the technique. The technique's called stick, switch, flip. Remember, stick the first fraction down, switch the division to a times, and flip the second fraction. And it's always that order. We don't flip the first fraction in this technique. It's always the second one that we flip. We then follow rules of multiplying a pair of fractions, which is multiplying the numerators, multiplying the denominators. Key rule we then follow, always simplify. Every time, whenever we're working with fractions, always simplify. We then have to remember, if we're working with mixed numbers, we turn them into improper fractions before we use this SFR stick, switch, flip technique. It's just like multiplication of improper fractions in mixed numbers, we have to make sure we do that first. Last thing to remember, check what the question wants. If it wants it in a set format, make sure you put it in a set format. If it doesn't, just make sure your format's the simplest way it is, and then you should manage it. Just remember, think smart, solve fast.